what you're trying to achieve. And that way you can really understand how you should go about things. You're not just kind of like, oh, guessing. And we're going to try and take that approach here with panels. And then understand what's it's doing for you, and why you might think about using it. So that's who I am. I come to the meetings because I really like Drupal, and it's been fun, and you'll learn a lot, and you meet nice people, and the community is great. Today we're going to look at panels, and we're going to know why you should use panel, and how that might help you do the work you're doing. How many people have used panel? So pretty good, like half and half, I guess. Okay. You probably don't know really what panels is about. And I'm going to try and make it easy because I made some pretty crazy statements in the announcement. I said there really is no such thing as panels. I'm going to try and prove that. I'm going to tell you that panels is fundamentally not a layout tool. Everybody thinks of it as a layout tool. It's a way to put things on a page. That's not what its fundamental purpose is. It has layout capabilities. You can use them or you cannot use them. And in fact, we'll show you that it's often better not to use them, crazy as it may seem. So maybe you don't know panels quite like you think you know panels. Now we're going to talk about some basics so that we can understand, and lots of times we get into this business because we're like hackers, we like working on stuff, but we don't know the fundamental ideas behind it. And I think Christoph is going to know the next slide, but we'll get there shortly. So we're going to talk about paths, which is a very simple concept, but more complicated than you think. We're going to talk about a thing called state, and we're going to talk about separation of concerns, and we're going to use a thing called MVC to illustrate that. And all these things actually matter. They're kind of like spacey ideas, and who really cares? But you're going to find out that they do matter, and they do make your life simple, or more simple, once you understand them. Who knows who this person is? New Christoph would. That brilliant and energetic person is Jody Hamilton. She is the CTO, the Chief Technical Officer for ZivTech. Get a chance to listen to her? Do it. She's deceptively simple in her presentation. It doesn't sound like profound things are going on, but what she's telling you is really profound. And what she was talking about at last year's Bad Camp was paths. Like just URLs. How big a deal could that be? And she was pointing out that almost all of our sites, including the ones we built, unfortunately, don't actually conform to the HTTP specification. They aren't URLs like they're supposed to be. So what Jody has is, Jody has 3 rules. All paths should be unique, that's not too hard. They should be hackable, we'll look at that in a moment. And they should be stateless, and we'll figure out what that is in a moment too. So basically the URL, as Christoph likes to call it, consists of 2 parts. There's a base, and there's this thing called a URI, the Uniform Resource Indicator. And this is really the meat and potatoes. This is where all the action is. Who cares about the base? That's just your domain. We're not really going to worry about that. And what Jody says is your URI should be hackable. That means if you're on this page that ends up with this green thing, which is the page name, then the rest of this should make sense. And if I go up into my browser bar and I erase that and just leave the orange, blue, and red in my browser bar, I shouldn't get a 403, right? I shouldn't see page not found. I should get a page that's about these things. And if I do the next thing, get rid of the orange, I should see a page, no 403, etc., etc. Try that on a lot of sites. It won't work. You're going to see a lot of 403s. Okay? Why do you do that? Well, for one reason, that's what Google expects. And robots like it, and if robots like it, then your site is going to rank well. So it's good for that, and it's good for a number of other reasons. But it also turns out to be good for panels, because panels, actually the panels system, and Page Manager in particular, is really interested in URIs, and you should be too. What does stateless mean? Well, you gotta, in order to understand stateless, you gotta know what state is. And what state is all the other stuff that isn't in the URI. It's like, who's the user? Are they authenticated? What's their role? Server variables, cookies, all that kind of stuff. You shouldn't stick them in the URI. If you've seen ASP programming, ever seen an ASP site? They stick everything in the URI. It just, kick it in there, that way we can retrieve it. That makes the URI nice and hackable, but not hackable in a good way, hackable in a bad way, because you can go up there and change whatever values you want, and maybe you'll hack it and maybe you won't, but you potentially could. Drupal actually protects against that quite a bit. And it's important to remember that HTTP is by design a stateless protocol. There's lots of fancy terms around that, but it basically says that URI should be clean. Now let's talk about another thing, which is called separation of concerns, and it's kind of a artsy-fartsy thing. And there's this thing called MVC. Has anybody heard of MVC? Okay, several people have. It's called Model View Controller. What it means is this is the data model, which is kind of like the basis of the whole thing. It's like in Drupal, it's your content types, and actually also includes your views if they're structured correctly. The view is the theme. That's the presentation layer. And there's this other thing called a controller, and what the hell is that? And that's the part that gets kind of lost in Drupal. We don't really know where to put that. And there's a couple of ways you can incorporate it. And unfortunately, what usually happens is it gets smushed into the view layer. And that's bad news. Because then if you have to change anything in the theme, big troubles. Chuck was just pointing out, he had a whole site where it was like, oh, just change the theme. I want it to look different. Chuck goes in there, the whole thing just blows apart because all of the business logic is contained in the theme. Now, MVC is an acronym written by engineers, and engineers can't write acronyms or name things worth a goddamn. I'm sorry. They can't. Don't ever let an engineer name something because it really should be MCV, because that's how the stack works. First, you build your data, then you figure out how you're going to associate it, and then you present it. So why is it backwards? Because they don't know anything about business, and controllers was about business logic, and let's just get rid of it, push it at the end. Oh, we don't know. So really the controller is your business logic, and most of the time that's association or what goes with what. Like in deference to J, if we had an album as our main content type, what other things would go with the album? Like the tracks that are in the album, like the band that made the album, like the tour that band has, like any number of associated items, right? And that's part of the business logic, and it's different for each kind of business, and we have to put that somewhere. And it's better if it's in code, and it's better if it's controlled, so that if we make mistakes, we don't screw up the entire site. And the place we might think about putting it is this thing called panel system. And it's really the system. This is why there's no such thing as panels. If you try and enable panels module, you'll find out you can't, not without a whole bunch of other modules. And so panels alone wouldn't do anything for you. The basis is ctools, which is essentially every site you ever build in Drupal has ctools, because you can't really do anything else, meaningful without it. Views is part of panels. It's incorporated. We'll show you very shortly. They're intimately tied. Page Manager is a requirement for panels. It's a way of managing URIs, and that's where this whole thing starts. And then Panelizer and a whole bunch of other modules are available to extend this process, and we'll talk about them mostly next time. So C-tools is a bunch of submodules, and if you ever look in there, we'll look at it shortly, you'll see all kinds of stuff. It's a collection of APIs, which really means, we use the term API a lot, it means it's a way of communicating. So an API is an approved way of communicating. If I want to ask Christoph a question about my site, I know he's a really smart guy and he'll give me a really good answer, but I can't just go, hey Christoph, my site's broken. I have to tell him, okay, here's the URI, here's what I expect, here's what I'm seeing, and any other relevant data, and then I'll get a response back that's coded in some sort of framework too, like, have you tried this? And so that's what APIs are. They're just approved ways of communicating, and that's what C-Tools does, and that's why it's so fundamental to so much of how Drupal works, because it's not only the other things that Rowe wrote, like views and panels, it's all these other systems, because everybody said, hey, look, Earl's written all of this stuff, will I not just use it? And so many, many, many of your standard Drupal modules use C-Tools. And it really provides integration, as we'll see in a second, between panels and all the other subsystems. So here's some of the stuff in C-Tools. And you notice that it has this thing called custom content panes, which is kind of like part of panels. It has another thing, page manager, which is required for panels. It has views, and if you're not using views and panels, you're missing the boat. So there's all kinds of stuff in there, and it's all part of that panel system. So page manager is an important part, because page manager doesn't manage pages. That's kind of a holdover from the way we think about a website as just a pagey thing, like it's printing. It really manages URIs. And it's really a GUI for hook menu alter, which again is a Drupalism. It should be router alter, and in D8 it will be, because it isn't really the menuing system, it's the routering system, but that's a whole other discussion. If you ever look at the page manager GUI, it's a big mess. Pay attention only to this part, which is right here, path. So path URIs is the important part. And you can identify one like node, and percentage node means the node, the number of the node. That's like your basic display a node. So what Page Manager is going to do is it says, I'm going to take over that. And now when Drupal gets a call for node 361, Page Manager is going to go, not so fast there, Drupal. I got that one. You know, pass it to me. And then Page Manager can do any number of things. It can pass it to panels, and it can actually do other things too. It can just redirect. It doesn't have to have panels. Page Manager actually stands alone. So panel system, again, is this combination of a whole bunch of things. URIs are really where it starts, and it makes a really sensible way of associating, making these business associations that are crucial to our sites. It can actually add state information and all kinds of stuff, because you can write whatever you want in C-Tools plugins and feed it to panels, and panels will understand it, and so you can write all kinds of crazy things, and they're not too hard, actually. And it's exportable. So the panels GUI, most people who use panels extensively hardly ever go here. It has lots of stuff going on. It's designed to be kind of easy to use, and once you get kind of used to using panels, you don't really need to go here, but you're certainly welcome to and discover what you can discover. Let's take a look at this concept. I told you that panels isn't essentially a layout tool. Everybody thinks of it as a layout tool. It's always, oh, do you use panels or do you use display suite? And it's like, I want to do layout. And you're going, well, you don't fundamentally understand the concept here, because display suite is about field layout. It's really good. We use it occasionally. It actually works with panels. A couple years ago, Earl Miles, the genius behind all of this, was at LA, DCLA camp, and he said, hey, you know, you can use display suite and just use the view modes in side panel panes, you know, I don't care. I got nothing against it. So the important element here is what we're going to do is we're going to use the most complex layout of all, one single column. We're just going to dump everything in one bin. No layout required. Why would we do that? Because maybe we're using Bootstrap. And we're going to wrap this whole thing, if you've used Bootstrap, it's a theming methodology, and it's really popular these days. So we're going to wrap this whole thing in a row, and then we're going to add classes to each one of these things, which is really easy in panels, so that they lay out. And guess what it's going to look like when we get done? It isn't going to look like a single column. It is from a layout standpoint as far as the business logic goes, but it isn't from a presentation standpoint, from the theming layer. And what do? We separated our concerns. We left theming to the themers. We made business logic stick in a logical place inside of Drupal. And it's really hard to do that with any other system. Now you can do a lot with context, and you can kind of get this business logic here and there, but Panels is a much more powerful system, and when you get into complex sites, Panels is really a cool way to go. Panels allows you to do all kinds of settings. So we can add CSS properties, we can change visibility rules. So this pane that lists artists shows on this page, but if it's Tuesday, it doesn't, or whatever we want, you know, or if there's a special that gets replaced, who knows? But we can put all of that into these visibility rules, and we can individually cache each one of these little bits and pieces, which is super helpful because Earl Wiles had a bunch of statistics, because everybody goes, oh, Panels is slow, and he says, no, if you make a complex page is complex and it loads slow, and Panels allows you to make complex pages. But if you want it to go fast, what you do is you just cache everything, and you have to figure that out because you have to go, well, this is dynamic, so I can't really cache it. This stays the same, so I can. So it's some work, and that's one of the ideas behind Panels, is it is complex. Contexts are another key feature of Panels, and we're not going to really, you're not going to understand all of this stuff if you haven't used Panels before, but I just want you to understand that it allows you to gather information from the node itself. So here's all the variables that are available in the node, all fields essentially. It allows you to look at whatever kinds of other relationships are available. So here's cool, I'm going to use a lot. Have you ever had somebody go, well, I've got, 16 taxonomies, and I want over here at the side to show something that's in this taxonomy and that taxonomy, and maybe on Tuesdays that taxonomy. Well, this allows you to actually build that. So you can take multiple terms from multiple vocabularies, commish them all together, and then send them off to your view. And remember, your view should be agnostic. It should be stupid. I think we're going to show that a little while later. If you're putting stuff into the view so that it knows where the argument is, you're not really doing it right.
By views, you're not talking about views as a module.
Yeah, I'm talking about your individual view
Okay.
displays. We'll see that again in just a sec. So it allows you to do all the field formatter stuff. So each time you put a field in a pane, you can do all the field formatter stuff you would do in any time you display a field. Panels is powerful, Panels is complicated. Start simple, work your way up. It takes a while. You're not going to learn it in an hour or two. But it's the one-stop place for encoding business logic into your site. Let's go through a quick example. You've got a view. It's got some complex contextual filters. So these are variable filters. They're basically saying, give me an argument. And that's what's going to change the data I'm going to return to you. I'm going to filter on that. I'm going to self-exclude myself, but I'm going to use this very complex multiple value depth taxonomy. So not am I only going to look at the taxonomy you gave me, TID 84, I'm going to look at anything that's below that too. So all of those things are included. So there's a lot going on here. So how do you inject args into that view? Really no other way but panels. And what you do is you come here to argument input and you edit it. But before that, remember to change the panel name from panel number 1, which is the default, or panel number 2 or 3, to something you can actually see. And remember, so when you look at it in that big list of things, you go, oh yeah, it's not just pane number 1, it's something that means something to me. So always remember to do that. But when you edit, then you'll see that you need to have a whole bunch of these taxonomy things together, and you've created this, and then you can stick it in there. And actually, this is the configuration of view. Sorry, I was ahead of myself. So this configuration of view, you say, okay, when I go set up the pane, when I make the display of this view, when I add it to whatever I'm showing, I'm going to feed it some stuff so that it knows what to do. And that way I could potentially use that view on many other places in many other contexts, right? Because I could use it on another page and just feed it a different batch of arguments. So I've separated the concerns. The view is dumb. It doesn't know. It's just waiting for directions. I'll do whatever you tell me. So now we go back to panels. So now we're inside panels. We're going to take these two taxonomies. We're going to put them in an OR concatenator so that they get linked up right. We're going to throw them in to the view pane. We're going to actually even do something really fancy and change the title to that pane. So it's going to change every time the node, because this is just the node title. So it's going to say this is stuff related to whatever that page is. So if it's blood, sweat, and tears, it's going to say this is what's related to those guys. It's complicated, okay? You're not going to learn it in a minute. But it's really powerful and it's fun. And so I think you really begin to see there is no such thing as panels. It's a whole system. You have to learn it bit by bit. It's not a layout tool. In fact, it works often better, particularly if you're like Bootstrap or something, to not do your layout in panels, because all those things you've heard about, oh, panels, layouts, are divided. They're filled with all kinds of stuff that's hard to theme. Well, they're right. Well, just do away with it. Dump it all in one bin. Let your themer do all the magic. Panels makes it really easy for your themer to add all the classes and stick them in the right places so they can get whatever layout you want. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Well, I think if you have questions right away, we'll let Christoph take off.
Well, I have one remark, because we're sort of working on a site rebuild right now. It's going to have all sorts of things strewn about, and sometimes the blocks are interspersed in the content, and sometimes they're going to be moved out into a sidebar, which isn't a sidebar anymore, because that's not the thing of the past. So I'm starting to think, maybe we should give panels a look.
Panels will allow you, it's really cool, because it'll allow you to display the same field multiple times. Right. And you can put visibility rules and say on Tuesdays, this pane shows up, and on Wednesdays, this pane shows up. Or you can say this spot here is formatted to show the map, and this is the same field, and it's formatted to show the link. Or I have two node displays of the same node, and this one I've used display suite view mode X, and then this one I've used display suite view mode Y, so I've separated all of the fields, and I can do all kinds of crazy things. And all that is business logic, okay? It shouldn't be in your theme. You should literally be able to, and it's really hard to do, so you don't always manage it, but you should be able to change the theme and have this site still work. And really, this is the only way to do it. And have it happen.
So a question, since you mentioned display suite, why would you build it a display mode in display suite, not an entity display mode module? Or even in a custom module, because they're actually really trivial to construct.
Yeah, well, that's what we do. Yeah, we used to use Display Suite. I don't think we've used it in a long time, but a lot of people like it and they're familiar with it, so we could.
Yeah, and we have done too,
Yeah.
until we found out, wow, that's like 10 lines of code.
Yeah, and entity view mode is so compact and lightweight,
Right.
it works so well. That's the one we use nowadays. So, try bounds. You should actually understand why it's important now, which is the first step. And sooner or later, we'll throw you a lot more information and further talks about how to actually use something, kind of little bits at a time, because it is pretty complex.